Thanks so much for doing this, Brian. Just to make sure I understand this, critics say that you tax capital gains at lower rates to incentivize investments that help the economy grow. Is the administration's perspective that among these high earners, they have not been making the investments to help the economy and that the government programs can do it better?
So across a wide body of academic and empirical evidence, there is no evidence of a significant impact of capital gains rates on the level of long-term investment in the economy. If you look back over the last 30 or 40 years, we've had capital gains rates at various rates. We've seen different levels of investment and overall economic growth. You can't identify a meaningful correlation between the two. There's lots of reasons for that, including that if you look at where a lot of venture capital and early stage investment comes from, it actually comes from pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, entities that actually are not tax sensitive. Also because at the end of the day, a lot of things go into making an investment decision. But certainly our view and reading of the evidence is that there is not there's not a correlation that would significantly affect investment for these highest income individuals, number one. And number two, we can use those resources to invest in areas that we know where there is convincing academic evidence, empirical evidence, that investments, for example, in early childhood and in our children return enormous dividends in terms of their own academic success, reduced costs in the healthcare system, productivity, and growth in the future.
Heather? Brian, one question on the Families Plan itself. Why isn't the White House including a plan to reduce the price of prescription drugs in the plan?
The good news about a question like that is I get to tell you that since we haven't rolled out the Families Plan yet, and I'm not going to do it at the podium right now, I am not going to confirm whether or not that is in. I can say that the president has long focused on the issue of rising costs of prescription drugs for American consumers and American families. It's something that he continues to focus on and prioritize, but I'm going to let him speak to those issues in the speech.
Andrew? Yeah, Brian, so on the question of how you enact this, so is this capital gains tax increase dead on arrival when it comes to the Hill? The Republicans are screaming that it is not a good proposal. There's even some concerns in Democratic circles. How do you convince people that this makes sense?
Well, I would say a couple of things to that. The first is on the facts and on the evidence, to go to the conversation we were just having, that we think that the best read of the evidence is actually that making this sort of change for that top 0.3% of taxpayers, equalizing ordinary income and capital gains would restore fairness and do so in a way that wouldn't significantly affect investment and that would allow us to make really high return investments for which there's been broad bipartisan support. So we think that that's a pretty sensible way of going at it, number one. Number two is the president has said in the context of the jobs plan and the corporate tax reform plan, and will say in the context of this plan as well, he is laying out his jobs plan and his family's plan. This is his vision for how we need to put in place a public investment agenda for the country. He is also identifying ways to responsibly pay for it, and he is welcoming and encouraging others to come forward with their ideas as well.
Are you going to need reconciliation to do this?
I think what you're going to hear from the president is a call to consider these investments and the potential that they would provide for the country, and engage in a serious conversation about both whether these investments are needed and if we can agree that they're needed, how we're going to offset their cost. He's starting that conversation where he believes it's a responsible place to start by putting a plan on the table, and we'll take the conversation from there.
Jeff?